You're 42 years old. You've been contributing to your 401k for 15 years. Not the maximum. You're doing 6% because that's what your employer matches, but you've been consistent. The account statement came last week, and you're sitting at $187,000. You ran it through one of those retirement calculators online. It says you're on track. Green check mark. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So why does it still feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff you can't see the bottom of? You'll be working for another 23 years if everything goes according to plan. Retire at 65. Social Security should kick in, assuming it's still there in some form. Medicare at 65. The 401k should be around $920,000 by then if the market averages 7%, and you keep contributing. The rule says you can withdraw 4% per year safely. That's about $37,000 annually, plus Social Security, which might be another $24,000 for you. $61,000 a year to live on, for potentially 30 years, maybe more if you're healthy. And somewhere deep in your chest, there's this quiet, persistent question. Is that actually going to be enough? If that uncertainty feels familiar, if the math says you're fine but something still doesn't sit right, you're not being irrational. You're picking up on something real. And I want to walk through what that something is, because it's not about whether you're saving enough. It's about what you can't calculate, the variables that don't fit neatly into a retirement calculator. The risks that only become clear when you stop thinking about retirement as a finish line and start thinking about it as a 20 or 30-year period of life with no safety net. Let's talk about why the math alone doesn't solve the uncertainty, and then let's talk about what actually might. When you plug your numbers into a retirement calculator, it's making some assumptions. The biggest one is this. It assumes the stock market will return an average of 7% per year, adjusted for inflation, over the next few decades. And historically, that's been roughly true. According to data from the Federal Reserve and financial research firms, the S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually over the long term, or around 7% after inflation. But here's the thing about averages. They smooth out the reality. Let's say you retire in 2026 with $920,000 in your 401k. You start withdrawing 4%, that's $36,800 in your first year. The plan is to increase that slightly each year to keep up with inflation. Sounds reasonable, but what if the market drops 20% in your second year of retirement? Now your account isn't $920,000 anymore, it's $736,000. And you're still pulling out $38,000 because you need to live. You just withdrew 5.2% instead of 4%. And if the market takes another few years to recover, you're pulling from a shrinking balance. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's one of the most underappreciated dangers in retirement planning. It's not about whether the market averages 7% over 30 years. It's about when those returns happen. If you hit a major downturn in the first 5 years of retirement, your portfolio might never recover, even if the market does well later. There's research from the Journal of Financial Planning. They ran simulations of retirees using the 4% rule. When retirement started during bear markets, 2000, 2008, the failure rate was significantly higher than when retirement started during bull markets. The math was the same. The sequence was different, and the sequence mattered more.
Here's the second thing the calculator can't account for. How long are you actually going to live? According to the Social Security Administration, a man who reaches 65 today can expect to live, on average, to about 84. A woman to about 86. But those are averages. About 1 in 4 65-year-olds will live past 90. 1 in 10 will live past 95. So when you're planning to make your money last from 65 to 85, 20 years, there's a real possibility you're underestimating by a decade. And here's the cruel part. The longer you live, the more expensive it gets. Healthcare costs rise with age. Long-term care becomes more likely. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, about 70% of people over 65 will need some form of long-term care in their lives. The median cost of a private room in a nursing home is over $100,000 per year. Even assisted living runs about $54,000 annually. Most retirement calculators don't factor in 3 years in a nursing home. They don't factor in your spouse needing memory care. They assume you'll live independently, relatively healthy, and then stop. And that's just not how aging works for most people. Let's talk about what happens between 62 and 65. A lot of people plan to retire at 62. Social Security allows it. You can start drawing benefits early, though they're reduced by about 30% if you claim before full retirement age. But Medicare doesn't start until 65. So if you retire at 62, you're on your own for health insurance for 3 years. And if you're not working, you're paying full freight. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the average premium for a 60-year-old on the Affordable Care Act marketplace in 2025 is around $850 per month in 2025. If you're married, that's $1,700 per month. Over 3 years, that's $61,200 in premiums alone, before deductibles, copays, or anything else. That $61,000 has to come from somewhere, and it's probably coming out of your 401k, which means your $920,000 is really more like $859,000 by the time Medicare kicks in, and you haven't even started regular retirement yet. Inflation is the other ghost in the machine. Retirement calculators assume inflation averages around 3% per year, and over long periods that's been true. But inflation isn't smooth, it spikes. We saw that in 2021 through 2023 when inflation hit 8 to 9% annually. If you're on a fixed income and prices jump 8% in a year, your purchasing power just dropped 8%, and unless your portfolio is growing by more than that, you're falling behind. Social Security does have cost of living adjustments, which helps, but they're based on the Consumer Price Index, which doesn't always reflect what retirees actually spend money on. Healthcare inflation, for example, tends to run higher than general inflation. Housing costs in certain regions outpace the CPI. If your actual expenses are inflating faster than the official rate, the adjustments don't keep up. And here's the thing. You can't go back to work as easily at 75 as you could at 45. If your money runs short, your options narrow fast. So here's where I want to shift how we think about this. We treat retirement as a math problem. Accumulate X dollars, withdraw Y%, live on Z income. If the numbers add up, you're fine. If they don't, you're not. But retirement isn't a math problem. It's a risk management problem. And the risks, market crashes, living longer than expected, healthcare shocks, inflation spikes, those aren't things you solve by saving more. The things you prepare for by building flexibility into the plan. The people who retire with the most confidence aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest accounts. They're the ones with the most options. Options like a paid-off house, so housing costs are minimal. Options like multiple income streams, so they're not entirely dependent on portfolio withdrawals. Options like lower fixed expenses, so they can adjust spending if the market tanks. Options like strong social safety nets, family, community, skills they can monetize if needed. The math tells you if you have enough money, but flexibility tells you if you have enough security.
If you're trying to build a retirement plan that actually feels stable, here's a different way to think about it. First, stability. What are your non-negotiable costs in retirement? Housing, food, basic health care, utilities. Can you cover those with guaranteed income? Social Security, a pension if you have one, maybe an annuity? If your baseline survival is covered by income that doesn't depend on the stock market, you've created a floor. Everything else is upside. Second, flexibility. Can you reduce your expenses if you need to? A paid-off house gives you flexibility. Low debt gives you flexibility. Skills that let you earn a little money here and there. Consulting, part-time work, freelancing, that's flexibility. The ability to move to a lower cost area if necessary. Flexibility is what keeps you from being forced into bad decisions when circumstances change. Third, growth. This is where your 401k and investment accounts come in. But growth is the third priority, not the first. If you've got stability and flexibility, then yes, let your portfolio grow and give you optionality, the ability to travel, help your kids, enjoy life. But if you're relying entirely on growth to cover your baseline needs, you're on shaky ground. Let me walk through an actual scenario. Two people, both planning to retire at 65 with similar account balances, $850,000. Person A owns their home outright, no mortgage. Property taxes and insurance run about $4,800 a year. They've kept their lifestyle lean. Total annual expenses about $42,000. Social Security covers $26,000. They need $16,000 from their portfolio. That's a less than 2% withdrawal rate. They have enormous buffer. If the market crashes, they can cut discretionary spending and be fine. If they live to 95, the money lasts. Person B still has a mortgage, $1,400 a month or $16,800 a year. Their lifestyle costs run about $62,000 annually. Social Security covers $26,000. They need $36,000 from the portfolio, a 4.2% withdrawal rate. They're tight. A market downturn in the early years could be devastating. If they live past 88, they might run out of money. Same account balance, completely different levels of security. The difference isn't how much they saved, it's how much flexibility they built into their lives. Here's the part nobody talks about. The uncertainty you're feeling isn't just financial, it's existential. For most of your adult life, your worth, socially, economically, personally, has been tied to your productivity, to your job, to your income. Retirement is the first time in decades where that structure disappears. You're not producing, you're not earning, you're drawing down, and that shift is disorienting even if the money is fine. The uncertainty isn't just, will I run out of money? It's, who am I when I'm not working? What gives my life meaning? What do I do with 30 years of unstructured time? And those questions don't have financial answers, but they have real weight. And I think part of why retirement feels uncertain, even when the math works, is because we're preparing for the financial transition, not the psychological one. You can't control the stock market. You can't control how long you'll live. You can't control healthcare costs or inflation. But you can control your fixed expenses. You can control your debt. You can control how much margin you build into your life. You can control whether you have skills and relationships that give you options beyond your portfolio balance. And you can control your expectations. If your plan requires everything to go perfectly, market returns, health, longevity assumptions, then yeah, it's going to feel uncertain because things never go perfectly. But if your plan has room for things to go wrong and you're still okay, that's when the uncertainty starts to ease. Look, I'm not saying the math doesn't matter. It does. You should absolutely be saving. You should absolutely understand compound growth and withdrawal rates and tax strategy. But the math alone won't make you feel secure. Security comes from having options, from building a life where your baseline needs are covered even if the market tanks, even if you live to 98, even if something goes sideways that you didn't plan for. The people who retire well aren't the ones who saved the most. They're the ones who built the most flexibility. And if you're feeling uncertain right now, even though you're doing everything right, maybe the question isn't, am I saving enough? Maybe the question is, am I building enough options? If this resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, calm, realistic looks at money decisions, and leave a comment. Tell me where you're at in your retirement planning. What's making you nervous? What are you doing to build flexibility? I genuinely love to hear. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.